So please welcome this week's special guest, Neil. So, Laura, what is Neil to you?
This is Neil, and he's the health and safety officer who I mistakenly pushed in the pool at the Love Island wrap party.
Right, Laura's wet workmate. Chris, how do you know Neil?
This is Neil, and I was once forced to stay at his house because I'd handed my own keys in to a lost property office.
Chris's sleepover saviour. And finally, David, tell us about your relationship with Neil.
David, look at him. You have never met that man in your life.
On the contrary, this is Neil, and I once sat on his shoulders to get a better look at a fat chaffinch.
So, there we have it. Lee, where do you want to start?
Laura,
Yes,
when was this?
back in February, Cape Town.
Why is there a health and safety guy, particularly on Love Island? Was he giving out condoms?
Believe me, you need health and safety on Love Island.
OK.
But I actually had never met Neil before. I thought he was someone else.
Who did you think he was?
I thought he was Cliff.
Who's Cliff?
Cliff was my driver.
Oh, you deliberately pushed Cliff?
Yeah.
But it's not Cliff, it's
No.
Neil.
Yeah, well, Cliff is a big guy and he's got tattoos.
Oh?
And he was wearing all black because everyone was wearing, like, black T-shirts and stuff if they were a crew.
Yes.
And over the course of 6 weeks, we're pranking each other. As you do. So, like, one day he gave me, like...
Chlamydia?
That's a hell of a prank.
Silly things like put chili in your coffee and stuff.
Oh,
Do you know
This
what I
is
mean?
your driver, Cliff.
Yeah, but, like, he becomes your pal because when you're over there, you don't know many people.
So you see who you think is Cliff.
Well, Cliff is a tall guy with tattoos.
Yeah, and you think, I want to see Cliff.
And he was at the very edge and he was talking to one of the girls. So I
Yes.
thought it'd be quite funny to...
So how does Neil react?
Well, he was quite wet, so I didn't really see him. I just saw when I turned around, on the other side of the pool, I saw Cliff.
Oh.
Did he take it well, or was he... I mean, he looks like he's still in a bit of a mood with you.
I don't remember there being laughing.
So it was a bit tense.
It was a bit tense, yeah.
And this is the first time you've seen him since?
I wrote him an email. I can't even remember what it said, but it was very brief. And it's actually quite awkward now.
How much of Love Island have you watched, David? I mean, is it... I'm so sorry, what?
I haven't seen that much of it. But
No,
that's
how much of it have you
It's an
seen?
embarrassing question to answer in the context of one of the programme makers, isn't it,
Well,
Rob?
I
And
mean,
I think on some level you know that.
All right, well, that's Laura. Who would you like to quiz next?
OK, Chris. Sorry, could you remind us again, Chris?
This is Neil, and I was once forced to stay at his house because I'd handed my own keys into a lost property office.
Whereabouts is the house?
I live in the leafy royal borough of Kingston-upon-Thames.
OK.
So which lost property office did you hand the keys to?
The Roundhouse music venue in London.
So where did you find these keys?
Well, they were my keys.
So they were in your pocket?
Yes. We'd been to the concert.
Who were you seeing? Who were you watching?
The late, great Chris Cornell, who's sadly no longer with us.
Ah, yes. Are you familiar with his work, David?
Nope.
Do you know his work with Savage Garden?
Now you've said some
Savage
other
Garden?
words in an order.
What are they called?
Soundgarden.
What?
Soundgarden.
Yeah.
Are you familiar with his work?
Soundgarden!
Oh, that is just brilliant. It's like watching two people on Last of the Summer Wine debating grime.
Chris,
So-
who had you gone to the gig with?
So I went to the gig with Neil. Neil's a friend of mine
How do you know Neil?
from childhood.
Oh, so is he from Liverpool as well?
Yeah.
Does he live in Kingston?
Yes.
So coincidentally, two friends from Liverpool grew up together, now live near each other, miles away in Kingston.
Well, I wouldn't say coincidentally. I mean, we moved to the same place as each other.
OK. So talk us through the key mix-up incident.
So I pulled out a tissue out of my pocket and I heard a set of keys land on the floor. And I thought, oh, hello, someone's dropped some keys there. I picked the keys up
Yeah?
and I didn't recognise them as my own keys.
Why? What do your keys have on them? Like a.
Well, what had
fob or
happened is
something?
I'd put a new keyring on them earlier that day, and I just didn't recognise them instantly.
The new key. What was the new key ring?
It was a heavy-duty Harley Davidson.
A whole-size bike.
So I held them up in the air
Yeah.
and shouted, "Has anybody lost any keys?" And nobody answered.
How come you didn't check yourself first and
Because
go?
I didn't recognise them as my keys.
But did you not think to check your pockets to see if you had your keys on you?
Well, would you check your pockets for your keys if you found keys that you didn't think were yours?
But I would have thought the first thing to do is have a feel to see if your keys are in your pocket.
If you owned a red phone and you found a blue phone on the floor, would you check your pocket to see if you still had your red phone?
That's a fair point. That's a fair point.
So nobody claimed ownership of them, and so I asked Neil, can you go and hand these in at the lost property, because somebody's dropped them.
Yeah.
Right.
And then I went home.
Right.
So I get dropped off, and then I'm having a rummage, and I'm like, I don't know where my keys are. I've lost my keys. That's a bit funny, isn't it? On the same day that I found somebody else... I see what's happened here. And then I had to phone Neil and ask him to come back and get me.
What colour was the phone? It's a lovely image, isn't it? Those two up north in Liverpool going, one day I'm gonna move away to London. And the other one going, can I come? Of course you can, Neil. You can look after the keys and I'll buy us a lovely big house.
All right. What about David?
You sat on his shoulders.
Yeah, remind us of this claim.
Yes, I once sat on his shoulders to get a better view of a fat chaffinch.
Is there a breed called the fat chaffinch?
No, this was a rotund example of the common or garden chaffinch.
What did you have to
It was sort
look
of
over?
up in a tree, and Neil was keen for me to get a good look at it.
Why?
Because I'd expressed an interest in birds. He said there was a lovely, interesting, quite fat chaffinch in this tree. And I sort of went, oh, yes, I can... Yeah. But Neil felt I could get a better look at it, and he was right. I didn't get a perfect view. I had a sort of sense of a bit of wingtip coming over the side of the... I can see it now.
Neil is literally stood there going, thank God I don't really know this man.
And I sort of climbed up, there was a bit of a gate there.
Right.
And I climbed up a bit.
Can I just interrupt you a second, David? Let's just get to the nub of the issue. How the hell do you know him?
Because I was staying with my family in a holiday cottage in Cornwall, let's say. Yes, Cornwall. And he lived in a nearby cottage. And one morning, it was a lovely...
One morning he said, hello, young David, who I've never met before. Have you ever seen a chaffinch?
Yeah.
How old were you?
It was last year, so I was...
Last year, you got on his shoulders. I just assumed it was from your childhood.
I mean, no. This is current me, and what I am asking you to believe is that Neil is strong enough to bear the weight of me for a few brief moments while I enjoy the miracle of nature.
But why is he there?
Well, he lives near there, and he happened to be there.
Just happened to be,
He happened to be
in
there.
the garden?
I don't know.
Was he in the
happened
garden?
to be there. For all I know, he'd been waiting there all night.
Right.
But I assumed we'd just encountered each other.
Is this in the back garden?
No, a little gravelly area
At the
outside
front?
both cottages.
Yeah.
Casual chat.
Yeah.
Lovely to be here.
Yeah.
And he says there's an interesting fat chaffinch.
Let's not forget, you said you were on gravel, so if this went wrong, it would... As somebody who has fallen from a height, this is... Gravel's not what you want a flower bed.
I wasn't in a position to ask for the ground to be relayed.
How did you get on? I don't mean, we went out for tea and How did you get on his shoulders?
Up the gate.
Oh, you said you got on the gate, stepped on his shoulder. How long were you up there for?
No more than an hour.
An hour?
For the bird watchers, paint a picture of the chaffinch.
It's sort of pinky front.
Pinky front.
A browny back.
Browny back.
Yeah.
And, beak and eyes.
So evocative.
Back to you in the Springwood studio.
we need an answer. So, is Neil Laura's wet workmate, Chris's sleepover saviour, or David's bird-watching buddy?
I have to say, first impressions are that Neil and Chris look about the same age. But the bit that I'm doubting is he heard the keys drop and he's just taken something out of his pocket.
I mean, if you drop keys, you know you've dropped keys, surely.
There were literally thousands of people coming out of this building creating noise and mayhem.
There's a lot of Savage
There's a
Garden
lot of
fans.
stuff going on.
Go, what do you think?
I think Laura's telling the truth.
You think Laura's telling the truth?
Yeah.
Why?
The tension was there.
You think there's a
between
tension?
them.
Yeah, there was an awkwardness.
OK, I'll go with my team and say Laura.
You think it's Laura? Neil, would you please reveal your true identity?
I'm Neil, and Chris had to stay at mine after handing his keys into lost property.
Yes, Neil is Chris's sleepover saviour. Thank you very much, Neil.